The room was cold, a sterile, gray box that smelled faintly of stale coffee and disinfectant. The only color came from the small, rectangular window showing a sliver of the darkening Chicago sky. I sat at a metal table, my hands resting on the cool surface, trying to stop them from trembling. Across from me, a detective named Miller stared at me with tired, patient eyes. He hadn't raised his voice once. He didn't need to. The silence in the room was louder than any shout. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I know this is difficult, but we need you to walk us through it one more time. From the beginning." I swallowed, my throat dry as dust. The beginning. It felt like a lifetime ago. Another world. Another me. Where's the beginning? I whispered. He leaned forward slightly, his expression softening just a fraction. "Let's start with the day it all began to unravel. The day the security guard gave you the note." His words were a key turning in a lock I had tried so hard to keep sealed. The memories flooded back, so vivid and sharp they stole my breath. The cold gray of the interrogation room dissolved, replaced by the warm, amber glow of a skyscraper lobby in late autumn. The air inside the building was a cool, controlled 72 degrees, a stark contrast to the crisp October wind whipping through the canyons of downtown Chicago. I sat on a plush leather sofa in the grand lobby of the Aon Center, the polished marble floors reflecting the soft lighting like a still, dark lake. Outside, the city was a blur of motion yellow cabs, hurried pedestrians wrapped in scarves, the distant wail of a siren. But in here, it was an oasis of calm and corporate power. I was waiting for my husband, Peter. We had a plan, a lovely, simple, domestic plan. We were going to pick up a birthday present for our daughter, Jane. She was turning 14 in a week, and her heart was set on a new phone. Peter, ever the doting father, had promised he'd leave work early so we could choose it together. He was a senior financial director at a major investment firm that occupied 3 floors of this glass and steel giant. His world was one of numbers, high-stakes deals, and corner offices with breathtaking views of Lake Michigan. My world was him and Jane. I checked the time on my phone. 4:45 p.m. He'd be down soon. I scrolled through a news feed, half reading headlines, my mind already picturing Jane's face when she saw the gift. She was a good kid, smart, funny, with her father's sharp wit and my more cautious nature. She idolized Peter. To her, he was a hero, a giant who could solve any problem and make the world right. I suppose, to me, he was too. A movement at the edge of my vision caught my eye. It was one of the security guards, making his slow, deliberate rounds. He was an older man, probably in his mid-60s, with a neatly trimmed gray mustache and kind, steady brown eyes. I'd seen him countless times before when I'd come to meet Peter. We'd exchanged polite nods, maybe a quiet good afternoon, but nothing more. He was part of the building's silent, efficient machinery, like the elevators or the filtered water coolers. His name was Arthur. I remembered from his name tag, but this time, he didn't just nod and continue on his path. He changed course, walking directly toward the sofa where I sat. He stopped beside me. I looked up, a flicker of surprise running through me. His face was etched with a strange expression, a conflict of concern and resolution. He glanced around the lobby at the receptionist typing away, at 2 men in suits talking near the elevators as if to ensure no one was watching. Then, he leaned down, his voice barely a whisper, a stark contrast to the cavernous space around us. "Mrs. Hayes," he said. I was startled that he knew my name. "I'm sorry to bother you. I need to give you something." Before I could process his words, his hand moved with surprising speed. He pulled a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket and, in one fluid motion, slipped it into my open handbag that rested on the cushion beside me. It was done so discreetly, so quickly, that if I had blinked, I might have missed it. "It's about your husband," he added, his voice even lower now, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Read it when you get home. Please. Not here. His tone was so grave it sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I opened my mouth to ask a question, to demand an explanation, but he was already straightening up, turning away, and resuming his post by the main entrance as if nothing had happened. He stood there, back straight, hands clasped behind him, the very picture of a stoic, impassive guard. I remained frozen on the sofa, my heart hammering against my ribs. What on earth was that? What could a security guard possibly have to tell me about Peter that was so secret, so urgent? He had to pass it to me like a spy in an old movie. I stared at my bag. The note was inside. A tiny, unseen object that suddenly felt as heavy as a brick. It seemed to pulse with a disturbing energy, a silent alarm I couldn't turn off. My first instinct was to tear it out and read it right there, to satisfy the frantic curiosity that was now clawing at me. But Arthur's words echoed in my mind. Not here. Why not here? What could possibly be in that note that was too dangerous to be read in this public space? I scanned the lobby again. It was the same as before, but now everything felt different. The men in suits, the receptionist, the people passing by suddenly. They all seemed like potential observers. I felt a paranoid prickle on the back of my neck, as if I were being watched. The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. I tried to go back to my phone, but the words on the screen swam before my eyes. My mind was a carousel of frantic questions. What could Arthur know about Peter? They didn't even interact. Peter worked on the 42nd floor. He had his own executive suite, a secretary, a team of subordinates. Arthur stayed down here, checking IDs and opening doors. But security guards see everything. They are the invisible eyes and ears of a building. People talk in front of them as if they aren't there. They overhear hushed conversations in elevators, witness late-night departures, see who comes and goes when the rest of the city is asleep. What had this quiet, kind-eyed man seen? I tried to think back over the past few weeks, searching for any sign that something was wrong with Peter. He seemed normal. He left for work around 8, came home around 7. Sometimes he stayed late, until 8 or 9. If there was a major report due or a meeting with the overseas offices. On weekends, we spent time with Jane, drove out to my parents' old lake house, or just had lazy afternoons in the city. He was the same attentive, loving Peter the First had known for 16 years, maybe a little more tired, a little more stressed, but that was to be expected in his line of work. It was true, though, over the last month or so, the late nights had become more frequent. He'd blamed it on the annual budget review, the end-of-quarter audits. I'd accepted it without question. It had happened before. But now, with that note burning a hole in my purse, a seed of doubt began to sprout. What if those late nights weren't about work at all? Finally, the elevator doors chimed and slid open. There he was. Peter walked toward me, a warm smile on his face. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his briefcase in one hand. Even at the end of a long day, he looked impeccable, his tie still perfectly knotted. "Hey, honey," he said, his voice smooth and familiar as he leaned down to kiss my cheek. "Sorry for the wait. Just had to sign off on the last few documents." His cologne was a subtle, clean scent I knew so well. "Ready to go spoil our princess?" I forced a smile, but it felt stiff and unnatural on my face. The note in my bag felt like a betrayal. I felt like I was hiding something from him, when the horrible truth was that he might be the one hiding something from me. "Yes, of course," I said, standing and smoothing down my coat. "Let's go." We walked towards the glass doors. As we passed the security desk, I couldn't help but glance at Arthur. He was sitting down, focused on some paperwork, and didn't even look up as we went by. It was as if our exchange from a few minutes ago had never happened, as if he hadn't just placed a small paper bomb in the middle of my life. In the car, Peter turned on the radio and started chatting about the different phone models that were popular with teenagers. He'd done his research, read reviews, compared technical specs. It was so typically him. Meticulous. Prepared. I listened with half an ear, nodding and murmuring in agreement at the right moments. My mind was elsewhere. "You're quiet tonight," Peter commented as we stopped at a red light. He reached over and placed a hand on my knee. His touch, usually a source of comfort, now felt like a brand. "Everything okay?" "Yes. Just a long day at work." I lied. The words felt foreign in my mouth. My day had been utterly routine. I was an accountant at a small office supply firm. The most exciting thing that had happened was the coffee machine being fixed. But I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't say, "The security guard at your office just gave me a secret note about you, and I'm terrified of what it might say." "Want to postpone the shopping?" he asked, his voice full of genuine concern. "We can go tomorrow, or this weekend." No, I replied quickly. "It's fine. Jane is so excited. We can't put it off." The truth was, I needed the distraction. I needed to do something, anything, to keep my mind from spiraling into a panic. The trip to the Apple store was an exercise in self-control. It took nearly 2 hours. We navigated the bright, crowded space while Peter grilled the salespeople with 1,000 questions about each model. He compared prices, features, warranty plans. On any other day, his thoroughness would have mildly annoyed me. I would have teased him about it, telling him to just pick one. But tonight, I was grateful for the delay. It gave me time to think, to try and prepare myself for whatever was waiting for me at home. Eventually, we chose a phone. Peter insisted on buying the extended warranty and a protective case. Afterwards, we stopped at a small cafe for a quick dinner. Jane had an evening study group and wouldn't be home until 9. So we had time. Over salads, Peter talked about our plans for the holidays. He wanted to go skiing in Colorado, rent a cabin in the mountains. He spoke of how much Jane would love it, of teaching her to snowboard, of cozy evenings by the fire. I looked at him, at this handsome, familiar face across the table, and tried to see behind it. We had been together for 16 years. We'd met in college, married right after graduation. I thought I knew everything about him, every mole on his back, every little habit, every hidden insecurity. But now, for the first time, I wasn't sure. Was this all an act? Was the man planning a family ski trip the same man who was secretly planning a new life, in a new apartment with someone else? The thought was so monstrous, so absurd, that I almost laughed. This was Peter, my Peter, the man who held my hand when Jane was born, who cried at the end of sad movies, who still made me breakfast in bed on my birthday. He couldn't be capable of such a deep, calculated deception. He just couldn't. "You're sure you're all right?" Peter's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the brightly lit cafe. "You've barely touched your food." I glanced down at my plate. The grilled chicken salad was almost untouched. "I'm just not very hungry, I guess," I murmured. "Must be the change in weather." He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His skin was warm, his grip firm and reassuring, a touch I had known for half my life. "Maybe you need a vacation, too," he said softly. "You've been working hard." A wave of guilt washed over me. I was being ridiculous. I was letting the bizarre actions of a stranger, a security guard, poison my mind against my own husband. What if the note was nothing? Maybe Arthur had seen Peter forget his keys or drop a document and was just being overly dramatic. There had to be a simple, innocent explanation. And yet, I couldn't shake the cold knot of dread in my stomach. Why the secrecy? Why the warning to read it at home? When we got back, Jane was already waiting, practically bouncing with anticipation. She heard the key in the lock and met us at the door. "Did you get it? Did you?" she asked, her eyes wide and shining. Peter, playing his part, presented the sleek white box with a theatrical flourish. Jane squealed with delight, throwing her arms around both of us in a fierce hug. The next hour was a happy blur of activity as we helped her set up the new phone, transfer her contacts, and install her favorite apps. She was in heaven, taking pictures of everything to test the camera, sending texts to her friends to show off her new toy. Around 10, she finally went to her room. Clutching her new treasure, Peter flipped on the TV, settling onto the sofa to watch the late news. "I'm going to take a shower," I announced, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. But instead of turning on the water, I locked the bathroom door behind me and leaned against it, my heart pounding. My hand shook as I reached into my purse and pulled out the folded piece of paper. It was a simple sheet, torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was a bit shaky, the letters formed with a sense of urgency. As if the writer was nervous or rushed, I unfolded it, and I began to read. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, I apologize for intruding on your life this way, but my conscience won't let me stay silent. I've been a security guard in this building for 5 years, and I've seen a lot of things. But what I've learned about your husband has compelled me to write this note. 2 weeks ago, I was on the night shift. At that hour, the building is mostly empty. Just the cleaning crews and the occasional employee working late. That night, I was doing my rounds, checking each floor to make sure everything was secure. When I got to the 42nd floor, where your husband's company is, I heard voices coming from his office. It was strange, because it was well past 2 in the morning. I approached quietly, just to make sure everything was all right. The door was slightly ajar. I saw your husband. He wasn't alone. There was a young woman with him, maybe in her late 20s, with long, dark hair. I don't know who she is, but I've seen her around the office. I think she works in the finance department. They didn't see me. They were too occupied with each other. I won't describe the details of what I witnessed, but I can assure you, it was not a business meeting. I left quickly, before they could notice me. But that wasn't the end of it. After that night, I started paying more attention. I noticed the same woman goes to his office frequently. Sometimes they leave the building together and get into his car. Yesterday, I happened to overhear them in the elevator bay. They didn't know I was around the corner. She was talking about an apartment they had looked at. She said she loved it and wanted to move in as soon as possible. Your husband told her to be patient, that he would handle everything soon. I thought long and hard about whether to tell you. It's not my place to interfere in a family's private matters. But when I saw you in the lobby today, looking so happy and unsuspecting, I couldn't keep silent. You have a right to know the truth. I am sorry if this note causes you pain, but it is better to know now than to find out when it is too late. Please be careful. I don't know what your husband is planning, but from what I heard about the apartment, it sounds like he is preparing to leave you. Sincerely, Arthur, the lobby security guard. I finished reading, and the tiled floor seemed to drop out from under me. I sank onto the edge of the bathtub, the damn piece of paper still clutched in my hand. My mind was a roaring storm. It couldn't be true. It was impossible. Peter was cheating on me, and not just a meaningless fling. He was planning to leave me. He was apartment hunting with another woman. 16 years of marriage. 16 years of believing we had a good, solid family. We had our ups and downs, our arguments and our struggles. But I had always believed we were a team, that we would face everything together. And all the while, as I was making plans for our holiday ski trip, my husband was making plans for a new life with someone else. The last few months suddenly replayed in my head, but this time through a new, horrifying lens. The late nights at the office, his occasional distraction, his moments of being lost in thought, the way he would sometimes angle his phone away from me when a text came in. I had chalked it all up to work stress, to fatigue. Never, not for a single second, had it crossed my mind that there could be another woman. Those late nights. How many times had Peter told me he had to stay late to finish an important project, to prepare for a big presentation? And I had believed him. I'd save dinner for him in the fridge, leave him little notes wishing him luck. And he was with her, that young woman from the finance department, late 20s. Arthur had written. I looked at myself in the mirror above the sink. I was 42. I took care of myself. I went to the gym. I ate well, but I couldn't compete with a woman in her 20s. She had youth, energy, a future stretching out before her. And me. I was a middle-aged mother of a teenager, tired from work and the daily routine. A knock on the door made me jump. Edley. It was Peter's voice. Are you going to be in there all night? I need to get in. Just a minute. I called back, my voice trembling. I quickly folded the note, shoved it deep into the pocket of my bathrobe, and turned on the shower. The blast of hot water a convenient cover. Standing under the spray, the water plastering my hair to my face. I tried to think. What do I do? Do I confront him? Storm out of the bathroom and wave this piece of paper in his face? He would deny it. He would say the guard was mistaken, or making things up. I had no proof, just the words of a man I barely knew. Or do I pretend? Do I pretend I know nothing and try to find out more? Follow him? Check his phone? His email? Find my own proof? The thought made me feel sick. I didn't want to become that kind of wife, suspicious, spying, consumed by jealousy. But what was the alternative? To live with this poison inside me, wondering every time he was late, every time his phone buzzed. Maybe I could talk to him calmly. No accusations. Just ask him if he was happy, if everything was okay in our marriage. Give him a chance to confess. But would he? And was I ready to hear the truth? I stepped out of the shower, dried off, and put on my pajamas. When I walked into the bedroom, Peter was already in bed, scrolling through something on his tablet. He set it aside when he saw me and smiled, patting the space next to him. Come on, he said, pulling back the covers. It feels like it's been a while since we had some time for just us. I froze. He wanted to be intimate with me? Nah. After he had been with her? How could he even look at me? A wave of revulsion washed over me, so strong it was almost physical. I have a headache, I said, turning my face away. A really bad one. I think I got too much sun today. Want me to get you some aspirin? He asked, his voice laced with that familiar, caring tone that now sounded like a mockery. No, thanks. I just need to sleep. It'll be gone by morning. I slipped into bed and turned my back to him, pulling the covers up to my chin. He sighed softly, turned off his bedside lamp, and soon, his breathing deepened into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. But I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I felt like a stranger in my own bed, lying next to a man I didn't know at all. My entire life, the life I had so carefully built and cherished, was a lie. And the worst part was, I had no idea what to do next. I woke the next morning feeling like I hadn't slept at all, a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. For a split second, I was confused by the feeling of dread, and then it all came rushing back. The note, Peter's betrayal, the other woman. He was already gone from the bed. The clock read 7:30 a.m. He was an early riser. As always, I could hear the familiar sounds of him in the kitchen, clink of a coffee mug, the low murmur of the morning news on the radio. They were the normal, comforting sounds of our morning routine. But today they sounded hollow and false. I went downstairs. Peter was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and reading the news on his phone. Jane was there too, eating a bowl of oatmeal while simultaneously texting on her new phone. Morning, Peter said, looking up as I entered. How's the head? Any better? For a second, I didn't understand. Then I remembered my excuse from the night before. Yes, I said, my voice flat. It's better. Thanks. I sat down and poured myself a coffee. My hands were shaking slightly. I prayed no one would notice. I looked at Peter, really looked at him, trying to see past the familiar facade. He seemed the same as always. Calm, composed, slightly preoccupied with his own thoughts. Mom, can I go over to Lucy's after school? Jane asked. We need to work on our biology project. Sure, honey, I answered automatically. Just don't be too late. Jane finished her breakfast, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and ran upstairs to get ready. Peter and I were alone. The silence felt heavy. Usually, we would chat about our plans for the day, share little tidbits of news. Today, I couldn't bring myself to make small talk. "I'm going to be late again tonight," Peter said, finishing his coffee. "Meeting with some potential investors. It could run long." A meeting with investors? Or a rendezvous with his mistress? I looked at his face, trying to read him, but it was a perfect, unreadable mask. "What time do you think you'll be home?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Not sure. Maybe 9, 10. Don't wait up for me for dinner. I'll grab something at the office." At the office? With her. I pictured them in his spacious office, sharing takeout sushi, laughing, touching. A lump formed in my throat. He stood up, came over to me, and kissed the top of my head. It was the same ritual he performed every morning for 16 years. Today, his touch made my skin crawl. "Bye, honey. Have a good day," he said, and then he was gone. I stayed in the kitchen, staring into my cold coffee. I should be getting ready for work, but I couldn't move. My mind was consumed with one thought. What was I going to do? And then, an idea took shape, a risky, terrifying idea. Since Peter was going to be late, I would have the perfect opportunity. I would go to his office building tonight. I would wait. I would see this woman for myself. I needed to know who she was. I needed to see the face of the person who was helping my husband destroy our family. I needed certainty. I couldn't go on living in this limbo, this hell of suspicion and doubt. The plan was dangerous. Peter could see me. I'd have to invent some excuse. But the need to know was stronger than the fear. Tonight, I decided, I would uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it was. My day at work was a phantom existence. I sat at my desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and invoices, the familiar world of numbers that usually brought me a sense of order and control. But today, the columns of figures were just meaningless squiggles. My body was present, but my mind was miles away, parked in a car across the street from a skyscraper, waiting for the sun to go down. I performed my duties on autopilot. I answered emails, ran reports, and even managed a brief, coherent conversation with my boss about a pending audit. A colleague, Carmen, stopped by my desk in the afternoon. "Hey, Edley," she said, leaning against the cubicle wall. "You okay? You seem a million miles away." I forced a smile that felt like it would crack my face. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well last night." "Tell me about it." She sighed. "I think this is the time of year when the whole city just runs out of steam." She chatted for a few more minutes about her weekend plans before moving on. I was grateful when she left. I couldn't bear the pretense of normalcy for much longer. Every tick of the clock on my computer screen was a countdown. 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. At 6 o'clock sharp, I logged off my computer. "Leaving early?" Carmen called out as I grabbed my coat. She always stayed until at least 7. "Have an appointment," I said vaguely, not daring to look her in the eye. The drive downtown was tense. Traffic was thick with commuters heading home, a river of red taillights flowing toward the suburbs. But I was going against the current, heading back into the heart of the city, toward the place where my life had started to unravel. I found a parking spot on a side street with a clear view of the entrance to Peter's building. I switched off the engine, and the sudden silence felt deafening. And then, I waited. The minutes stretched into an hour, then more. I watched streams of people pour out of the building's revolving doorsmen, and women in sharp business attire, their faces etched with the fatigue of a long week. I scanned each face, my heart lurching every time I saw a woman with long, dark hair. The sky faded from gray to a deep, bruised purple. Streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows on the pavement. I felt a chill that sank deep into my bones, a cold that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. Just as I was starting to think I had wasted my time, that they had already left through another exit, I saw them. He came through the doors first, holding one of them open. Then she emerged. She was exactly as Arthur had described. Young, probably not even 30. She was slim, wearing a stylish black coat and high-heeled boots that made her look even taller. Her dark hair fell in a sleek curtain past her shoulders. She was beautiful, effortlessly, confidently beautiful. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, talking. Peter was smiling, a relaxed, easy smile I hadn't seen on his face in months. He said something, and she laughed, tilting her head back. The sound, even from this distance, felt like a physical blow. He reached out and lightly touched her arm. A casual, familiar gesture that spoke volumes. There was an intimacy between them, an easy chemistry that was undeniable. They weren't just colleagues discussing work. They were two people connected by something much deeper, something secret and alive. A red-hot spike of anger and pain shot through me. The proof was right there, standing under a streetlight, laughing together as if they didn't have a care in the world, as if I didn't exist. They began walking toward the parking garage connected to the building. He opened his car door for her, a perfect gentleman. She slipped inside. He walked around to the driver's side. A moment later, his black Audi pulled out onto the street. My body moved before my brain had a chance to object. I turned the key in the ignition, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I pulled out from my parking spot and fell in behind them, keeping a safe distance of 3 or 4 cars between us. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I didn't know where they were going. I only knew I had to follow. I had to see this through to its bitter end. They headed north, away from the direction of our suburban home. I followed them through the glittering city streets, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. 20 minutes later, Peter's car signaled and turned into the underground garage of a sleek, modern condominium building in River North, a neighborhood of expensive high-rises, art galleries, and trendy restaurants. The building was all glass and steel, a place where apartments cost a fortune. I couldn't follow them inside. I pulled over to the curb a block away and just sat there, staring at the imposing entrance. This had to be it, the apartment they had been talking about, their new home. The minutes ticked by. I watched as lights flickered on in the windows of the tower, little squares of warmth and life. I tried to guess which one was theirs. I imagined them inside, taking off their coats, pouring a glass of wine. Were they celebrating? Were they making plans for the future they were stealing from me and Jane? The images in my head were so vivid, so painful. I had to squeeze my eyes shut. An hour passed. Then 2. The night grew darker and colder. A few snowflakes began to drift down, melting on my windshield. At nearly 11 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I started the car and drove home in a numb, heartbroken haze. Jane was asleep. I checked on her, tucking her blanket around her shoulders and kissing her forehead. Her peaceful, innocent face was a painful reminder of everything that was at stake. I got into bed and pretended to be asleep when Peter finally came home. Close to midnight, he undressed quietly in the dark, trying not to wake me. When he slipped into bed beside me, the air filled with a scent that was not his. It was a faint but distinct perfume, something floral and sweet, a woman's perfume. I lay there, perfectly still, my back to him, and choked back a silent sob. There were no more doubts, no more desperate hopes that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. My husband was living a double life, and from the looks of it, his other life was far more real to him now than the one he shared with me. The next morning, I made a decision. I would not be a passive victim in the destruction of my own life. I was an accountant. I dealt with facts and evidence. I would gather my own. I called in sick to work, claiming a sudden stomach flu. After Peter left for the office and Jane was off to school, I sat down at my laptop. His social media was pristine, a carefully curated gallery of corporate events, family photos, and congratulatory messages from colleagues. He was too smart, too careful to leave a trail there. So I tried a different approach. I picked up the phone and dialed the main number for his company. When the receptionist answered, I used a calm, professional voice. "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak to someone in your finance department. Please. It's regarding an external audit query." "Of course. The receptionist said, "Who would you like to speak to?" "Actually, I'm not sure of the name." I improvised. "I was told to speak with one of your newer analysts. A young woman. Very sharp. I believe she's been handling the quarterly investment portfolios." There was a pause and the sound of typing. "That might be Valentina Morales." The receptionist offered. "She's been with us for about 8 months. Very bright. Valentina Morales." The name hung in the air. "Yes, that sounds right," I said, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside me. "Could you put me through to her? Please." "One moment." The line clicked. A few seconds later, a clear, confident voice answered. "Valentina Morales speaking." I took a deep breath. "Ms. Morales," I began, inventing a new lie, a new identity. "My name is Claudia Shaw. I'm a consultant, and I was hoping I could book a brief meeting with you. I need some expert advice on a private financial matter." We made an appointment to meet for coffee the next morning at a cafe near her office. As soon as I hung up the phone, I typed her name into Google. Her LinkedIn profile appeared first. I clicked on it, and my breath caught in my throat. The profile picture showed the same woman I had seen last night. Young, beautiful, smiling confidently at the camera. I scrolled through her page. University of Chicago MBA. Glowing recommendations. A fast-rising star in the world of finance. Then I found her public Instagram profile. It was a catalog of a glamorous life. Cocktails with friends at rooftop bars. A weekend trip to Miami. And then, a photo posted about a month ago stopped my heart. It showed Valentina standing on a pier, the ocean stretching out behind her. Next to her was a man, his arm around her waist. He had his back to the camera, looking out at the water. But I didn't need to see his face. I knew that posture. I knew the shape of those shoulders. I knew the way he stood. It was Peter. The caption read, "The perfect weekend in Napa." A month ago, Peter had told me he was at a mandatory corporate retreat in Wisconsin. A boring, work-filled weekend. He had even called me, complaining about the terrible food and the long sessions. He had been in Napa with her. I felt a new wave of sickness, a deep, soul-crushing nausea. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. I finally had a name. I finally had a face. And tomorrow, I would have a conversation. I would sit across from the woman who was sleeping with my husband, and I would finally hear the whole, devastating truth. That night, sleep was an impossibility. I lay in bed, the space beside me feeling vast and cold, though Peter was right there, breathing softly. Every few minutes, I would open my eyes in the dark, my mind replaying the image of him and Valentina, their backs to the camera, looking out at a sun-drenched horizon that wasn't meant for me. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building a new world, brick by brick, lie by lie. The next morning, I moved through our routine like a ghost. I made breakfast, packed Jane's lunch, and saw my husband off at the door with a kiss on the cheek that felt like ash on my lips. He had no idea he was kissing his executioner, or perhaps the woman he had already executed. "Have a good day," he said, smiling his easy, charming smile. "You too," I replied, my voice a hollow echo of my former self. I spent the next 2 hours preparing for battle. I chose my outfit with the care of a general selecting her armor, a simple but elegant black dress, a tailored blazer, low heels. I wanted to look confident, professional, in control. I would not meet my husband's mistress looking like a heartbroken, frumpy housewife. I would meet her as an equal. The cafe was a small, chic place with exposed brick walls and the rich aroma of roasted coffee beans. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in a quiet corner, a strategic position where I could see the entrance. I ordered a black coffee and held the warm ceramic mug in my hands, trying to absorb some of its heat, trying to calm the tremor that had taken up permanent residence in my fingers. At precisely 10 o'clock, she walked in person. Valentina Morales was even more striking than in her photos. She was tall and poised, moving with an innate grace that commanded attention. She wore a sophisticated gray pantsuit that was professional yet undeniably stylish. She scanned the room, and I raised a hand. Her face broke into a polite, professional smile as she approached my table. "Claudia Shaw?" she asked, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Yes," I said, shaking it. Her grip was firm. "Please, sit down. Thank you for meeting me." "Of course," she said, sliding into the chair opposite me. "So, you mentioned a private financial matter?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, buying myself a few seconds to gather my courage. This was it, the moment of truth. I placed the mug back on the saucer with a soft clink. "Actually, Valentina," I said, my voice low but steady, "I didn't ask you here to talk about finances." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Oh, then, what is this about?" I looked her directly in the eye, holding her gaze. "My name is not Claudia Shaw. My name is Adley Hayes, and I'm Peter Hayes's wife." The change in her expression was instantaneous and dramatic. The color drained from her face. Her polite smile vanished, replaced by a mask of pure shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked like she had been slapped. "I know about the two of you," I continued, pressing my small advantage. I refused to let my voice shake. "And I think it's time we had a conversation." Valentina was silent for a long moment, her eyes darting around the cafe as if looking for an escape route. When she finally spoke, her voice was a choked whisper. I don't know what you're talking about. Peter is my boss. We have a professional relationship." A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. "Please, don't lie to me. I've had enough lies to last a lifetime. I saw you together 2 nights ago. I saw him take you to the condominium in River North. I saw you go inside together." She visibly flinched, her composure crumbling completely. "You were following us? A wife has a right to know where her husband is spending his nights," I countered, "especially when he tells her he's working late." An uncomfortable silence fell between us. She stared down into her empty cup, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. I waited, giving her space to process, to decide what her next move would be. "He told me you were separated," she finally said, her voice barely audible. The words were aimed at the table, not at me. "He said you had been for over a year, that you were just finalizing the paperwork for your daughter's sake." The classic, pathetic excuse of a cheating husband. It was so cliché it would have been laughable if it weren't my life he was describing. "No, Valentina," I said, my voice hard as ice. "We are not separated. We live in the same house. We sleep in the same bed. We are raising our daughter together. At least, that's what I believed until a few days ago." Her head snapped up, and her eyes, now glistening with unshed tears, met mine. "I didn't know," she whispered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than guilt in her expression. I saw confusion. I saw another kind of betrayal. "I swear to you, I didn't know. He told me he was single. He showed me a rental lease for a small apartment he said he was living in after the split. He said he wanted to start a new life with me." So he had lied to her, too. He had constructed an entirely different false reality for her, casting himself as the lonely, separated man eager for a fresh start. The sheer complexity of his deceit was staggering. "How long?" I asked, the question tearing at my throat. "How long have you been together?" She hesitated, then looked down again. 8 months. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. 8 months. For 8 months, my husband had been living this double life. For 8 months, he had come home to me, kissed me, slept beside me, all while his heart and his future belonged to someone else. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice now devoid of all emotion. "I need to know it all." And she did, wiping away tears with a napkin. She told me the story. They met when she first joined the company. He was her mentor, charming, attentive, helpful. It started with professional lunches, which bled into after-work drinks. He had painted a picture of a lonely, loveless marriage. He complained that his wife didn't understand him, that they were just strangers living under the same roof. He said you only stayed together for Jane, Valentina recounted, her voice thick with shame. He said there had been no intimacy between you for years, that you slept in separate rooms, that as soon as Jane went to college, you would make the divorce official. Every word was another twist of the knife. Peter hadn't just betrayed me physically. He had assassinated my character, rewritten our history, portrayed me as a cold, indifferent wife to gain this young woman's sympathy. And all the while, it was I who had been trying to keep our marriage alive, suggesting date nights, planning romantic getaways, fighting against the slow erosion of time and routine. And the apartment? I asked, my voice flat. The one you went to see? Valentina nodded miserably. He bought it. He took out a mortgage. We were supposed to move in next month. He said by then, he would have told you everything, that you would separate amicably. Bought it. A mortgage. A move-in date. This wasn't just an affair. It was a meticulously planned exit strategy. He had built his new life before even beginning to dismantle the old one. I looked at this young, beautiful, weeping woman across from me. A few minutes ago, she had been my enemy, the other woman. But now, I saw her differently. Valentina, I said, and my own voice surprised me with its calmness. I don't blame you. You were a victim of his lies, just like me. But now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed and full of a dawning horror. She was silent for a very long time. Then, with a resolve that seemed to harden her soft features, she said, I can't be with a man who could lie like that. If he deceived you for 16 years, he'll deceive me too. A single tear traced a path through her makeup. I'm going to end it. Today. That's your decision, I said, nodding slowly. But can I ask you for one thing? Anything. Don't tell Peter that we met. Not yet. I need some time. Time to figure out what I'm going to do. I have a daughter to protect through this nightmare. Valentina nodded immediately. Of course. I understand. She fumbled in her purse for her wallet. And I am so sorry. If I had known the truth, I never would have. I know, I said, cutting her off gently. I didn't need her apologies. I needed to get out of there. We parted ways on the sidewalk outside the cafe. She walked away hunched over, all of her earlier confidence gone. I got into my car and just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to start the engine. My mind was in turmoil. On one hand, I had my confirmation. On the other, the reality of it was so much worse than I could have ever imagined. 8 months of lies, a new home, a new future planned behind my back. I drove home and walked through the silent rooms of my house. The house we had bought together. The house where we had raised our daughter. Every objective photo on the mantelpiece. A pair of his shoes by the door. The coffee mug he used this morning felt like a prop in a play. A play in which I was the unwitting, foolish lead actress. The phone rang, jolting me from my trance. It was him. Hey, honey. His voice was cheerful, normal, just calling to check in. Listen, I'm going to be late again tonight. Don't wait up. Another meeting? Another late night at the office? Or was he going to try to salvage things with Valentina? Okay, I said, my voice a dead monotone. Don't work too hard. I'll try, he said. Love you. Love you. The words, once the bedrock of my life, were now meaningless. Just sounds he made out of habit. You too. I lied, and hung up the phone. That evening, I existed in a strange state of hyper-awareness. Every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall sounded like a hammer blow. The scent of the lemon cleaner I'd used on the kitchen counters was overwhelmingly sharp. I was seeing my life, the life I had so carefully curated, as if for the first time, and I could see the cracks in everything. I made dinner for Jane. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Peter had lied to me just that morning, and I listened to her talk about her day at school. She was excited about a history project, complaining about a pop quiz in algebra. It was the beautiful, mundane music of our life, and a wave of protective fury washed over me. He was not going to destroy this. He was not going to break her heart with his selfish, sordid little secrets. "Dad working late again?" she asked, noticing his empty chair. "Yes, honey," I said, keeping my voice even. "A big deal is closing." The lies now came as easily to me as they apparently did to him. Later that night, as Jane was in her room doing homework, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and my stomach lurched. It was Valentina. I opened the door. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Her makeup was smeared, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. "I'm sorry to just show up like this," she stammered, her voice thick. "I know I shouldn't have, but I had to talk to you." I let her in and led her to the kitchen, the irony not lost on me that I was now offering comfort to my husband's mistress. In the heart of my family home, I poured her a glass of water. She drank it down in one gulp. I ended it with him, she said, her hands trembling as she set the glass down. "This afternoon, I told him I couldn't be with a liar." "And how did he take it?" I asked, my voice betraying no emotion. "At first, he denied everything. He swore I had it all wrong. But when I told him I had met with you, he admitted it." She paused, her eyes welling up with fresh tears. "But the worst part, Adley, he's not sorry. He said he was going to leave you anyway. He said our conversation just sped up his timeline." Rage, cold and pure, flowed through my veins. "Not sorry. He felt entitled to this destruction. He said he's coming here tonight," Valentina continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "He said he was going to tell you everything, that he didn't want to live the lie anymore." "How noble of him," I said, the sarcasm dripping from every word. "After 8 months of deceit, he suddenly decided to be honest." "Thank you for the warning," I told her. "It's the least I can do," she said, twisting a napkin in her hands. "But there's something else." When I told him it was over for good, he got angry, really angry. She hesitated, then looked at me, her eyes wide with a fear that I recognized was real. He grabbed my arm, so hard. He said I would regret this, that nobody walks away from him. She slowly pulled up the sleeve of her silk blouse. On her pale forearm, 5 distinct bruises were already forming the clear imprint of a hand. I stared at the marks, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Peter, my Peter, who had never so much as raised his voice to me in 16 years, was capable of this. He was not just a liar and a cheat. He was violent. "You should go to the police," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Valentina shook her head, pulling her sleeve back down. "No. I just want this to be over. I'm going to quit my job. I'll find something else. Maybe even move out of the city. I wanted to warn you. Be careful. He's not who you think he is." After she left, I walked through the house, checking every lock on every door and window. Then I went to Jane's room. She was lying in bed, reading a book on her tablet. "Hey, sweetie," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" She put her tablet down. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" How could I possibly prepare her for the earthquake that was about to rip through her world? How do you tell a 14-year-old girl that the father she worships is a monster? I couldn't. Not yet. So instead, I just stroked her hair. "I just wanted to tell you that I love you," I said, my voice thick. "And no matter what happens, I will always be on your side. You and me." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "Mom, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" "Nothing. Honey, I'm just feeling a little emotional tonight. Get some sleep." I kissed her forehead and left the room, closing the door softly behind me. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, the polished family photos smiling down at me like ghosts from a life that was already over. Peter came home just before midnight. I was in the living room, pretending to watch a movie. I heard his key in the lock, The soft thud of his briefcase on the floor. My heart rate kicked into overdrive. But I forced myself to remain calm, to breathe evenly. He walked into the room and stood in the doorway. His face was a mask of grim determination, but I could also see a sliver of relief in his eyes, the relief of a man who was tired of holding up a crumbling facade. "Adley," he said, his voice flat, "we need to talk." I didn't turn to look at him. I just stared at the flickering images on the screen. "I'm listening." He walked further into the room and sat in the armchair opposite the sofa. He was silent for a few moments, gathering his words. "I know you know," he began. "Valentina told me you met with her, so I'm just going to be direct. I'm seeing someone else. It's been going on for 8 months. I love her, Adley, and I want to be with her." It was just like that. Simple, brutal, no apology, no remorse. Just a statement of fact, laid on the table like a business proposal. "And what is it you're proposing?" I asked, my own calmness surprising me. "A divorce," he said. "A civilized one. No drama, no fighting. The house is yours and Jane's. I'll pay a generous child support. We can work out a visitation schedule that's best for her." So neat, so tidy, so rational, as if he were negotiating a merger, not detonating a family. "And our 16 years of marriage?" I asked, finally turning to look at him. "Do they mean nothing at all?" He sighed, a long, weary sound of impatience. "Adley, let's be honest with each other. Our marriage has been over for a long time. We're just roommates. There's no passion, no real connection. There's just habit. Is that what you think?" I shot back, a spark of my old fire returning. Because from where I was sitting, our marriage was very real. I loved you. I trusted you. I was making plans for our future. You were the one who was living a lie. I didn't want to hurt you, he said. And the fact that he could say that with a straight face, without a trace of shame, was the most insulting thing of all. It just happened. I met Valentina, and I realized what I had been missing, what real love feels like. Real love. He had the audacity to use those words. "Did you grab her arm?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did you leave bruises on her because she wanted to leave you?" The color drained from his face. "She told you that." He ran a hand through his perfect hair. It was a moment of anger. "I didn't mean to. I just lost my temper. And that's supposed to make it okay? I'm not making excuses," he snapped, his voice rising for the first time. "I'm just explaining. Look, it's over with Valentina. She made her choice. But that doesn't change the fact that our marriage is dead, and we need to end it." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark, quiet suburban street. Out there, people were sleeping peacefully in their beds, their lives intact, their families whole. My own life had become a war zone. "Fine," I said, my back still to him. "We'll get a divorce, but on my terms." "What terms?" he asked, his voice wary. "The house is mine and Jane's, free and clear. You'll pay 50% of your salary in child support and alimony. And I will be the one to explain to our daughter why you're leaving. You won't use the pathetic 'we just grew apart' excuse. You will tell her the truth. You will tell her you cheated on me for 8 months with a woman from your office." "That's cruel, Adley," he retorted. "Why traumatize the girl with the sordid details?" "Because she deserves to know the truth," I said, turning to face him, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. "And it's better she hears it from you than from someone else." He was silent for a long time, weighing his options. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Fine, I'll tell her. But I want to pack my things and be out of here by tomorrow." "Good," I replied. "The sooner, the better." He stood and walked toward the door. Before he left the room, he paused. "Adley, I am sorry for how this all played out." I shook my head slowly. "No, you're not," I said. "If you were sorry, you wouldn't have lied for 8 months. You wouldn't have bought an apartment with another woman. You wouldn't have planned an entire new life behind my back. So don't pretend to have regrets you don't feel. Just go." He left without another word. I remained standing by the window as the tears I had been holding back for 2 days finally came. They streamed down my face, hot and silent. I cried for the years I had wasted, for the love I had believed in, for the family that was now broken beyond repair. But beneath the grief, a new feeling was taking root. It was small and fragile, but it was there. It was relief. The lie was over. The truth was out. And as painful as it was real. And it was a place to start rebuilding from. I woke up the next morning feeling as though I'd been in a car crash. Every muscle ached, and my head throbbed with a dull, persistent pain. For a blissful, fleeting moment, I thought the conversation from the night before had been a nightmare. But the empty space in the bed beside me, and the sounds of drawers opening and closing in the spare room where Peter was packing, brought the brutal reality crashing back. I got up, showered, and went downstairs to make coffee. I had to maintain some semblance of normalcy, at least until Jane was awake. I had to be the calm center of the storm that was about to break over our lives. She came down half an hour later, yawning and rubbing the sleep from her eyes. "Dad's up early," she commented, seeing him walk through the kitchen with a duffel bag in his hand. "Are you going on a trip?" Peter froze, the bag slipping slightly in his grip. He shot a quick, panicked look at me. I just nodded. It was time. "Jane, honey, come sit down," he said, setting the bag on the floor. "We need to talk to you." The carefree expression vanished from Jane's face. She looked from him to me, her eyes wide with a dawning apprehension. Kids always know. They have a sixth sense for when the ground is about to give way beneath them. "What's going on?" she asked, sinking slowly into a chair at the table. Peter sat opposite her and took her hands in his. I could see the struggle in his face as he searched for the right words. I stood by the counter, my arms crossed, a silent observer at the execution of my daughter's childhood. "Janie," he began, his voice strained. "Your mom and I, we've made a decision. We're going to get a divorce." Jane snatched her hands away from his as if she'd been burned. "What? Why? But you guys love each other. Sometimes love isn't enough." "Sweetie," Peter started with the tired, old line, but I cut him off. "Jane," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "your father has met someone else. He's been seeing her for 8 months, and he wants to go and live with her now. Not with us." Peter shot me a look of pure fury, but I held his gaze. "We had a deal. The truth." Jane's head swiveled toward her father, her expression a mixture of disbelief and utter devastation. It was as if she was seeing him for the first time. "Is that true, Dad?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Peter's eyes fell to the table. He couldn't look at her. "Yes," he mumbled. "It is. I never planned for this to happen. It just happened." Jane was on her feet now, her voice trembling with a rage that mirrored my own. "You cheated on Mom for 8 months and you call that something that just happened? What about us? What about me? Jane, this has nothing to do with you," Peter said, trying to placate her. "I will always be your father. I will always love you. Don't you dare," she shrieked, tears now streaming down her face. "Don't you dare talk to me about love. You betrayed Mom. You betrayed me. You betrayed our whole family. I hate you." She turned and fled the kitchen. A second later, we heard the slam of her bedroom door upstairs. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. "You did that on purpose," Peter said finally, his voice low and menacing. "You turned her against me." I told her the truth. I replied calmly, "You're the one who wanted to be honest. Remember? I didn't think you'd just throw it at her like that. So bluntly. And how would you have preferred I phrase it? Peter, that Daddy has a new special friend? She's 14, not 4. Sooner or later, she would have found out the truth anyway." He stood up and grabbed his duffel bag. "I'll get the rest of my things later. When she's calmed down, I'll try to talk to her. Give her time," I said. She's not going to be ready to listen to you for a very long time." He gave a curt nod and walked to the front door. "My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers," he said. And then he was gone. He just walked out of our lives, leaving me with the shattered pieces of our daughter's heart. I went upstairs and knocked softly on Jane's door. "Go away," she sobbed from inside. "Janie, it's me. It's Mom. Can I come in?" There was a long silence, then a muffled, "Okay." She was curled up on her bed, her face buried in her pillow, her shoulders shaking with violent sobs. I sat beside her and gently rubbed her back. "Mom," she wailed, rolling over to face me, her face red and blotchy. "How could he do this? How could Dad do this to us?" I pulled her into my arms and held her tight. "I don't know, my love," I whispered into her hair. "I don't know. Sometimes people, they change. They make terrible choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love the most. He doesn't love us anymore. He loves you," I said, though the words felt like a lie in my mouth. "Whatever happened between me and your father, you will always be his little girl. I don't want to see him," she said, wiping her eyes fiercely. "Ever again. I know that's how you feel right now, and that's okay. But maybe, with time." "No," she insisted. "He's a traitor. He wrecked our family." I didn't argue. She had every right to her anger, to her sense of betrayal. Peter hadn't just deceived me. He had shattered her entire world, the safe and stable world we had built for her. The rest of the day, we were in our own little bubble of grief. I called the school and told them Jane wouldn't be in. We watched mindless movies, ate ice cream straight from the carton, and cried. In the late afternoon, my mother, Carol, showed up. I'd called her that morning, my voice breaking as I told her what had happened. "I'm on my way," was all she'd said. She walked in, took one look at our tear-stained faces, and immediately took charge. She made us tea. She listened as I recounted the whole sordid story, and she held Jane in her strong, comforting arms. "I never trusted him," my mother said that evening, after Jane had cried herself to sleep. "He was always too smooth, too perfect. The perfect ones are always hiding something. Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked, a trace of bitterness in my voice. She looked at me with her wise, tired eyes. "And would you have listened? You were in love. You were happy. I was hoping I was wrong." A week after Peter left, he tried to see Jane. He called, saying he wanted to talk, to explain. Jane refused. "Tell him I don't want to see him," she told me, her jaw set. "And I'm not answering his calls." I relayed the message. There was a long silence on Peter's end of the line. "You're poisoning her against me," he finally accused. "No, Peter," I said, my patience worn thin. "You did that all by yourself the day you decided our family wasn't enough for you." He became angry, threatening to get a court order, to force visitation. I called a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Bridget Larson who specialized in family law. She assured me that at 14, Jane's wishes would carry significant weight with any judge. He couldn't force her. The divorce proceedings moved forward with a cold, brutal efficiency. It turned out Peter was eager to get things over with. His lawyer sent over a settlement agreement that met all of my terms. The house, the alimony, the child support. It seemed he was willing to pay any price to be free. Life settled into a new, painful rhythm. I went to work. I took care of the house. I tried to be strong for Jane. Outwardly, things might have looked almost normal. But inside our home, there was a gaping hole, a constant, aching absence. For 16 years, I had been a wife, one half of a whole. Now, I had to learn how to just be me. One evening, about a month after Peter had left, I was returning home from work. It was dark and raining, a miserable, cold night. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw him. Peter was parked across the street, just sitting in his car, watching the house. A cold dread washed over me. I quickly got out of my car and hurried inside. locking the door behind me. I went to the window and peered through the blinds. He was still there, just sitting, watching. What did he want? I picked up my phone, my hand hovering over the numbers 911. But what would I say? That my ex-husband was parked on a public street? They couldn't do anything. After about 20 minutes, he started his car and drove away. But the incident left me shaken. This wasn't the behavior of a man eager to start a new life with his lover. This was something else, something obsessive. The next day, I received flowers at work, a huge bouquet of white roses, my favorite. The card read, "I made a terrible mistake. Please talk to me. P." I threw them in the trash. The calls started after that, dozens of them a day, from a blocked number. I didn't answer. He left rambling. Desperate voicemails. "Adley, please, pick up the phone. We need to talk." Valentina was nothing. A mistake. A moment of insanity. "You and Jane are my real family. Just give me one chance to fix this." I deleted them without listening to the end. It was too late for apologies. The damage was done. The trust was shattered. Then, the harassment escalated. He showed up at Jane's school, trying to talk to her as she was leaving. She saw him and ran back inside, terrified. The school called me, and I had to leave work to pick her up. That night, I had Bridget send his lawyer a cease and desist letter, warning him to stay away from me and our daughter. It all came to a head on a cold night in early December. I was driving home, my mind numb with exhaustion. As I turned onto my street, I saw the flashing lights first, red and blue, painting the dark, wet street in terrifying colors. An ambulance, a fire truck, and they were parked in front of my house. My house, or what was left of it. Flames were leaping from the second-story windows, thick black smoke billowing into the night sky. I slammed on the brakes, my car screeching to a halt in the middle of the road. I stumbled out, my legs barely able to hold me. My mother and Jane were huddled together on the neighbor's lawn, wrapped in blankets, their faces pale and streaked with soot. "Oh, my God," I breathed, running toward them. "Are you okay? What happened?" Jane flew into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The smoke alarm went off, my mother said, her voice shaking but steady. The fire started near the front door. We barely made it out the back. I held my daughter and stared at the inferno that had once been our home. All our memories, our photos, our lives turning to ash. And in the deepest, coldest part of my heart, I knew this was no accident. This was his answer to the lawyer's letter. This was his rage. This was Peter. If he couldn't have his family back, then he would make sure no one could. He would burn it all to the ground. The hours after the fire were a blur of flashing lights, the acrid smell of smoke, and the cold, institutional comfort of police station blankets. We were lucky. The fire department had responded quickly, and a neighbor had pulled Jane and my mother out through the back door, just as the flames engulfed the porch. We had suffered some minor smoke inhalation, but we were alive. Our home, however, was gone. A fire marshal, a grim-faced man named Calloway, confirmed what I already knew in my soul. "It's arson, Mrs. Hayes," he said, after a preliminary examination of the scene. "No doubt about it. Accelerant was used on your front porch. Someone wanted this fire to spread, and spread fast." He looked at me, his eyes sharp and questioning. "Do you have any idea who would want to do this?" I told him everything. The affair, the violent outburst with Valentina, the stalking, the harassment, the desperate voicemails. I told him about Peter sitting in his car, just watching the house. As I spoke, I watched the detective's expression shift from professional sympathy to focused intent. They found Peter less than 2 hours later, at a hotel near the airport. He denied everything. Of course, he claimed he had been in his room all night, preparing for an early morning flight for a business trip, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Security camera footage from a gas station to blocks from our house showed his car there. An hour before the fire, he was filmed filling a small, Red gas can. The hotel's key card records showed he had left his room for a period of nearly 3 hours, contradicting his alibi. And then there was Valentina, who, when contacted by the police, bravely came forward and told them about his threats and the bruises he'd left on her arm. He was arrested and charged with arson, insurance fraud, and 3 counts of attempted murder. The revelation of his motive was the final, sickening twist of the knife. During their financial investigation, the police uncovered the real reason for his desperation. Peter wasn't just a cheat. He was a gambler and a terrible investor. He had lost millions of dollars of his clients' money in high-risk trades. He was deep in debt to loan sharks. His career was on the verge of collapse, and he was facing prison time for embezzlement. The affair, the divorcee, had all been part of a monstrous, calculated plan. He needed to legally separate his assets from mine before his financial world imploded. He had manufactured the affair with Valentina to create a plausible, almost mundane reason for the divorce. His ultimate goal was to burn down the house, collect the substantial insurance money, pay off his debts, and disappear to start a new life. He had never intended to be with Valentina. He had used her, just as he had used me. We were just pawns in his desperate, greedy game. The trial was a public humiliation. Our private pain was laid bare for the world to see. I had to testify, to recount the most painful moments of my life under the cold, fluorescent lights of a courtroom. I had to look at Peter, sitting at the defendant's table, his handsome face now a pale, drawn mask of self-pity. He never looked at me, not once. He was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 20 years in a maximum security prison. The day the judge read the verdict, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a profound and hollow emptiness. The man I had loved, the father of my child, was a monster, and our 16 years together had been a lie built on a foundation of secrets and deceit. It was over, but the scars would remain forever. The months that followed were a struggle for survival. We lived with my mother while we dealt with the insurance company and looked for a new place to live. Jane was in therapy, trying to cope with the trauma and the horrific betrayal of the father she had once adored. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the black and white certainty of numbers. Slowly, painstakingly, we began to heal. We found a small, new house in a different town, a place with no memories, no ghosts. We painted the walls bright, cheerful colors. We planted a garden. We started over. Life went on. Jane finished high school and went off to college, majoring in journalism. She said she wanted to spend her life uncovering the truth, so that no one else would have to live through the kind of lies we had. I was so proud of her, of the strong, resilient woman she had become. I found a new job at a larger accounting firm. My new boss, a kind, divorced man named Bruno, had been through his own painful separation. He understood loss and the difficult road back to normalcy. We became friends, then something more. It was slow, cautious. The idea of trusting another man, of opening my heart again, was terrifying. But Bruno was patient. He was honest. He was everything Peter had only pretended to be. One crisp autumn evening, 5 years after the fire, Bruno and I were sitting on the porch of our new home. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. Jane was home for the weekend from college. My mother was inside, humming as she baked an apple pie. A scene of quiet, domestic peace I once thought I'd lost forever. I saw an article online today. Bruno said softly, taking my hand, Peter Hayes was denied parole. I nodded, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over me. Good, I said quietly. Do you ever think about him? He asked. I thought for a moment, looking out at the setting sun. I think about the man I thought he was. I admitted. The man I married. I mourn him sometimes. But the man he became. Or maybe, the man he always was? No, he's a ghost. And I don't believe in ghosts anymore. Good, Bruno said again, squeezing my hand. Because you deserve to believe in the future. Jane came out onto the porch, carrying 3 steaming mugs of cider. She handed one to each of us and sat on the steps, leaning her head against my knee. "It smells like Mom's apple pie," she said with a contented sigh. "It smells like home." Home. The word resonated deep within me. This was home now. Not a place of lies and secrets, but a place built on a foundation of truth, resilience, and a hard-won peace. I looked at my daughter, her face illuminated by the golden light of dusk. I looked at the kind man sitting beside me, his love a quiet, steady presence in my life. The wounds from the past were still there, faint white scars on my heart, but they no longer ached. They were just a part of my story, a reminder of the fire I had walked through to get here. Arthur, the security guard, had given me a note that shattered my world, but in doing so, he had also given me a gift. He had given me the truth, and the truth, as brutal and painful as it was, had set me free. It had allowed me to escape the burning house of my old life and find my way to this Anya life that was real, a life that was honest, a life that was finally, truly my own. The air grew cooler as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon. I pulled my sweater tighter around me, leaned my head on Bruno's shoulder, and smiled. The past was a closed book. The future was an open page. And for the first time in a very long time, I was ready to see what was written on it.